Fantastic. So welcome everyone. My name is Pranav. I'm going to host a hopefully different tone in this panel. We've spoken a lot about all kinds of things about India's past. We've gone all the way back to Nehru, which is frankly a little too far away. So hopefully we'll talk about nicer things, about the future, where India is going, what we're excited about. I think we have two millennials on this, 2.5 millennials on this panel, two Gen Xers.
You said millennials or millionaires?
Millennials. Okay. Not yet billionaires. Saket has to prove us all.
Trillionaire, right?
Trillionaire, yeah, he set the bar high. But we have a fairly younger, a little bit more interesting perspective. A lot of builders here. One founder, of course, one ex-founder. I worked in a startup myself. Both Anil is an operator. Saurabh's building one of India's best firms. So you'll hopefully get to hear a diverse set of perspectives. And we'll try to keep it engaging. I think the last 5 or 10 minutes we'll open up for questions. So please prepare your questions as we're speaking through the panel. So let's start with Saurabh. So Saurabh, everyone in the room either has seen you on TV or seen you on YouTube. I don't know if you've been with Arnav yet, but that's a fantastic show if you could propose that to him. But what you're best known for is talking about what works in India consistently. You invented this term called consistent compounders, right? You've written, I think, 6 or 7 books now. And a unifying theme across all of your writing and speaking is that there is this very interesting sliver of opportunity in India, where if you buy into these basket of companies, they are amongst the best stocks to own in the world. I've read all of your research. You've spoken about how India is either the #1 or #2 best performing market in the public markets globally, always 1 or 2 with twinning with the US. It's the #1 performing country in the MSCI Emerging Markets Index. And India is now more profitable than any other country in the emerging index as well. So despite all the very strange things we've discussed in the first half of the day, if you're a stock market guy, if you're a real money guy, I think all of us are fiduciaries, and this guy writes the contracts for the fiduciary agreement, so all of us know that side of it quite well. The real dollars at stake here, right? And people like Saurabh are held very strongly accountable to making that dollar compound. So Saurabh, objectively, because you've worked in so many parts of the world, why has India performed despite all these things we've heard, especially in the last 25 years? Walk us through what is the thesis for India to be amongst the best performing markets, and what could keep it going the next decade?
So it's a privilege being here. It's a privilege being here, not least because people like me in the stock market, right? Very, very rarely do we get to attend sessions on environment, on global security, and so on. So it's a real eye-opening experience to be here. But let me start with some numbers, right? I think in the preceding session, I think it was Jitu. Jitu in the preceding session said that it's not difficult to envisage a world a decade hence where the 3 superpowers in the world are India, China, and the United States, right? And I was looking at his face when he said that, and it clearly was a leap of imagination for people to believe that. Now it's very strange, right? For people like me who work in the stock market, I've been working in the stock market in various countries for 20 years. For me, that's the world I've grown up in. There are only 3 countries who matter in investing. The rest of the world is a holiday destination, right? And interestingly, after the United States, it's not China that matters. In investing, only one country matters other than the United States, and that is India. Why? Right? So let's look at the numbers. So in investing, we use something called total shareholder returns, TSR, right? It includes dividends, the share price plus the dividends. That's the metric to which we are held accountable to. So if, say, the endowment here gave us money, they would tell us total shareholder returns, kitna banaya, how much did you make, right? So America leads the world. Over the last 10 and 20 years, America has made more money than any other country in the world. America has compounded at roughly 10% dollar terms over the last 10 and 20 years. But only one other country, only one other country has competed with America shoulder to shoulder over 10 and 20 and 30 years, and that's India. No other country, barring these 2 massive free market democracies, there must be something going for free market democracies. If the world's two best compounding engines are both free market democracies, there must be something going for it. No other country has made it to double digits, right? Not China, nowhere by a country by, none of the European countries, and no one else in Asia. Taiwan has, but Taiwan has done so because of one company, right? Which is that one company? TSMC, right? TSMC, with all due respect to Taiwan, is an adjunct of Silicon Valley. It happens to be in Taiwan, and I guess they're now relocating to the US itself, right? If you leave aside Taiwan, no other country, barring India and America, have made it, right? Now, America making it to the top of the charts in global compounding doesn't surprise anybody. But India making it surprises lots of people, including many people in India itself. Right now, why does India make it? And why is India the only country on the face of this planet, which in dollar returns, right, not rupee, dollar returns goes toe-to-toe with America decade after decade, right? There are three things which work in India and which work very well. First is we have an intensely competitive economy, right? Contrary to the headlines you read about crony capitalism, if you work in the Indian stock market, if you work in the Indian economy, it is super competitive. Whether you're selling investment services like I do, you're selling cement, you're selling paint, you're selling plastic products, you're selling undergarments, everything is bloody competitive. If you can, many people try, if you can befriend a politician to help you protect some market share, corner a part of the market, you are welcome to try. But the second thing which makes India so successful is the polity itself is super competitive. Right? So yesterday, when I came yesterday for the evening session, the dinner that we had been invited to, I was discussing with someone from a prominent city in South India, how competitive real estate is in that city. Right? Now, real estate, most people's mind, is a corrupt sector, right? Most people think real estate is a sector where politicians help you corner part of the market. But real estate itself is competitive because there are politicians competing for patronage of a real estate builder. So our economy is competitive. Our polity is competitive, right? If anybody tells you Indian politics is, corrupt, right? You can take that as face value. I do, but I can guarantee you Indian politics is super competitive, right? Those are two very important things. Many countries in the world have a veneer of civilization and civility, but that covers low competition. Many European countries have that. They're lovely places to visit on holiday, but these are genuinely uncompetitive economies. By uncompetitive, I mean the intensity of competition is muted in those countries, right? Our polity is competitive, our economy is competitive, and the third thing, we've got a lot of things right in our education system. I think MDP highlighted it. We've got a lot of things right in our education system, and specifically, the dynamic around South India and women is quite remarkable. So just quick stats on this. Southern India, by Southern India, I mean the southern 7 states. I live in Maharashtra, so I like to include Maharashtra in the southern 7 states. Please don't get into a fight with me. Some South Indian people do, so.
We gladly welcome Maharashtra.
Right, thank you so much. So the southern 7 states account for a quarter of India's GDP, two-thirds of quarter of India's population, half of India's GDP, and two-thirds of India's GDP growth. The southern 7 states have grown at 8% in the last 10 years. I think that safely makes them the world's fastest growing region. And my reading is the next 10 years will also be an 8% plus. It will safely stay the world's fastest growing region. Just remember again, quarter of India's population, half the GDP, two-thirds of the GDP growth, right? And the second aspect of women, and I'll just take what MDP said and go one step further. There are more women in school, college, high school, and university than men. Women's pass rates are higher at every level of education compared to men. And now comes the startling part. Over the last 5 years, the RBI has repeatedly highlighted that urban women now have way more money in their bank accounts than men. The World Bank has pointed out urban women have more bank accounts than men. So women have more money in the bank than men. And in case somebody in this room is thinking, well, that must be because the accounts are fewer, I'm afraid that's not true. Women also have more accounts than men. And more recently, it's come to light that in the stock market and mutual fund accounts, women have more money, urban women more money in mutual funds than men do. Right? Now, if a country can pull this off at a per capita income, which is still 1/20th that of America, India's pulled all of this off. We're toe-to-toe with America in compounding. Our women have more money than our men in urban areas. And we're doing this at 1/20th of America's per capita income. Then imagine what the consequences will be a decade hence when we'll be closer to 1/4 of America's per capita income. So there's plenty working in India, and I find it very interesting coming to Silicon Valley that people have to stretch their brains to think of a world a decade hence where it'll be a tripolar world. In the world of investing, it's already a bipolar world. It's America and India, nothing else really counts. China was there a decade ago. Whatever they've done to screw their chances is their prerogative. My job as an Indian investor is to come to this country and help Americans invest as much as possible in India.
Fantastic. Thank you, Saurabh. We'll come back to some questions, but I want to sweep through the rest of the panelists as an intro. So Anil, you've been a pioneer. You were one of the first people in the Valley to start a cross-border law firm. I believe Inventus is now the best known one in that corridor. And despite political affiliations, wars, whatever has happened in the last 30 years, it's inevitable that this US, Bangalore or Bangalore, Silicon Valley, US tech, India tech, whatever you want to call it, that corridor has been a consistent compounder for both countries. Fantastic, one of the best performing in the world. So from your viewpoint, because you see so much from investments to people flows, all of it, talk to us about what's happened in the last 20 years and what do you expect to happen in the next 10?
First of all, I'm still trying to get over the facts that you shared, Saurabh, and particularly how does Maharashtra become part of South India? I mean, that skews up
Discuss it over a drink, yeah.
Yeah, that skews up the numbers. Now, keep South Bombay, fine, but come on, rest of Maharashtra, that's not right. So yes, I mean, Pranav, and we've known each other for a while, we've talked, we've done business together. We've all been very privileged, right, to be in this position where we get sort of the insights from Silicon Valley particularly. And when we say US, it's largely Silicon Valley. And when we say India, it's largely Bangalore and these handful of cities that are emerging tech cities. As far as my practice is concerned, as far as people around in this room are talking about. In the last 20 years, I've been very fortunate. I started my practice a long time ago, but in Silicon Valley in 2000. And at that time, I was literally the only brown lawyer at a firm called Cooley Godward of 700 lawyers. I remember a couple of Indian founder clients here complained to my partner that, hey, why are you teaming just because he's an Indian? And it's obviously changed. Now I run a law firm called Inventors. I started in 2009. Majority of the lawyers are Indians. Majority of our clients are Indians. A large number of our clients are Indians who've relocated from India. And typically in the 20 to 25 to 30 year age, the level of confidence has completely changed. And the level of commitment and connections, when they come in, they know. I mean, I'll also give you sort of one going back. Ravi was one of the first founders to get into Y Combinator from India, Interview Street. When he landed in Palo Alto, I was playing poker at my friend's house. He came from the airport because YC had told him to contact us to set up. After he had an Uber, or he had a taxi, actually, there was no Uber, his taxi standing outside. He asked me, like, I have to go to Mountain, how far is Mountain View from here, And imagine from that time when founders coming in didn't know where YC was, to now they have it back of the pub, right? I mean, they've traveled and all of that. There are hundreds and hundreds of new founders coming in. We have George here from Avatar, we have Manthan here from Westbridge. So many investors, billions, tens of billions of dollars have been allocated, really, and they'll tell you more about their specifics, but have been allocated for these Indian founders that are coming into the US. And not any founders, but Indians specifically. You would invest in an Indian company in Bangalore that's actually doing business in the US. I get calls at least once a month from private equity investors. Some of them I've never heard of in the US. Somewhere in like Carolinas, right, or Chicago that I'd not heard of. They're saying, hey, introduce us to these two companies from India that we'd like to bring over and invest in. Saket is a great example of a company like that. He's been able to raise hundreds and at some point the T word, $1 trillion. But so many great examples. And my only comment to everyone in this room is, we are just fortunate to be living these times. And we'll talk more about the geopolitical winds and where India, US, especially Silicon Valley, Stanford specifically, and India opportunity will align, and how much of an opportunity it is. So if you do just one thing, figure out what you can do, where you can make a business out of or a career out of this opportunity. It's very enjoyable, it's very personal, and having grown up in India and working with Indian founders coming in, it's so much fun. Plus, it's a business opportunity. So again, we are very blessed with all that.
Excellent, thank you. Manthan, now you've been a founder yourself, successfully acquired, then you worked for a global firm launching in India, now you're working for an Indian firm going global at Westbridge, so you've seen the whole loop, which is fantastic. You're still young, the best years are ahead of you. So through your last 10 to 15 years, walk us through how you've seen this corridor evolve, and now what is the narrative of an investor when you look at India from the US specifically when it comes to tech?
Yeah, thanks, Pranav. No, I think super exciting times. I think 10 years ago, we had to just look for 2 or 3 examples, and we had to default to Freshworks and Zoho, where still were thought of companies who are trying to copy what's been done, but building in a cheaper way because they are solving problems for SMBs and mid-market companies who are very cost conscious. So India was always thought as, within technology, let's find opportunities where cost is a very important factor, and let's build it cheap and sell the software for cheap. We'll do the sales from India, we'll sort of figure out how to make it work because we are selling it at a cheaper price. To now, I think there are companies like Postman, companies like Innovator, bunch of companies who are not only the best companies coming out of India, but they are the best globally in what they do. I think there is no question that going forward, whether in the AI race or whatever frontiers the technology is going to move to, India is going to be able to produce the best in the world. And there are, I think, 2 or 3 things, I will talk more about it, in my opinion, why in the last decade plus, why have things shifted. I think one is the quality of entrepreneurs. By far, I think the quality of entrepreneurs today, folks like Saket and bunch of entrepreneurs in the room and elsewhere, is just, I think we are on a trajectory where we get blown away every time we meet a next entrepreneur who's building something. So I think that's the key reason. All kudos to the entrepreneurs. I think second is within the technology frame, I think India itself is producing the quality which is comparable to best in class. There was a narrative before saying, will this be good quality sort of technology or not? I think there is no more question now. Obviously, global IT services companies have laid the foundation to have sort of millions and millions of great engineers, but above that, I think we have been able to create sort of the quality which people will absolutely pay any dollars for, right? And last, I think there is a big wave where India is leapfrogging to best-in-class technology, even the Indian enterprises, because of which we are able to make sure that we don't have to wait for how things play out in Silicon Valley. Okay, let's see what sort of the framework being used. Indian government obviously is pushing the overall government infrastructure, which is also enabling a lot of innovation. And I think the lines are blurring, which means a company starting in India won't think about, let me build for India, go to the next market. It's global from day one and driven by quality of entrepreneurs, quality of the products they have built, and just the overall sort of opportunity. So yeah, some of the observations on what's helping the US India corridor.
Fantastic, thank you. And Saket, now obviously you've spoken on the last panel, so I can't repeat the same parts. But I think you made one interesting point, which I'd like to drill down on. You mentioned that you were to shut down the services business, come here, become a product thinker. You spoke about the differences in the customer's mindset, which is absolutely true. We struggle with that every day still in our SaaS practice back home, but it's improving every year, right? Now, I want to fast forward 10 years in your mind. You'll be an uncle, everyone look up to you as a legend. Hopefully, you'll be a $1 trillion outcome for someone here. Now, what should the students in the room start preparing for today, for where India is going to be in 10 years' time?
You mean a Stanford student?
Yeah, no, students from everywhere. There's Stanford kids here, there's kids from other universities. But these are some of India's brightest. Obviously, they've made it to some of the best universities. What should they start thinking about India? And let me add some color, because when I was here 15 years back, most of the friends I competed with, Raghu is here, he's one of the smartest guys in our batch, he's a physics professor now. All the brightest guys like him stayed back, right? I was an idiot going back to Bangalore in 6 years. Turns out it was a good decision, but back then it was a very scary decision.
So as Saket thinks of his response, can I give you a Desi swagger story? So this is 6 months ago, I'd come for work. My colleague Achint, who's seated at the back, he specializes in booking budget hotels. So we were in a budget hotel near Union Square. And we're walking back to the hotel after dinner, and I see this Indian dude smoking at the entrance of the hotel. I didn't think much of it. I walked inside. So I then saw that he dropped his cigarette, and he came running after us. So he introduced himself, said, I'm so-and-so. I've come from India. I'm from, I think it's IIT Bombay or IIT Chennai, a computer science student. And I said, why have you come? And he said, I've come to meet Y Combinator. Hopefully the meeting is tomorrow. So I thought he'd come for a funding trip, right? So then I asked him about the business. The business is something to do with AI. I'm not an electrical engineer or computer scientist. So I couldn't fully understand, but I understood that he's created a use case which has global application. I think, Saket, to your point, right? So this guy was based in, I think, Gurgaon. He's based in Gurgaon. So I said, best of luck for the pitch tomorrow. He says, no, don't worry about the pitch. I've just come here because they're paying for the air tickets. I'm not going to take the money. So I thought, that's interesting. So I said, okay, well, in that case, best of luck in building a business. He said, on that, could you please introduce me to, and this will be music to Pranav's ears, could you please introduce me to angels and family offices in India? Wow. So I said, let me get this straight. You've come here to meet YC. You're IIT, Bombay or Chennai, and you want to turn them down and raise money in India. So he said, look, as I see it, over the next 10 years, the amount of growth my business will have in India, it'll not have it anywhere else in the world. And his words, right, this guy, the Desi IIT dude, that I need an Indian investor so that as I grow in India, I've got my bases covered back home in the market where I think I can ramp really fast. Okay? So I said, okay, why don't you drop me a mail? I'll make the introduction. I did actually, Pranav, I introduced him to you. Then comes the punchline. So I, as a parting comment, I said, when you become a billionaire, next time I'll say trillionaire. When you become a billionaire, please remember Marcellus. We are here to invest your money. So what he said next took my breath away. He says, I'm already a Marcellus client. Wow. Right? And that's when my jaw dropped. Right? This guy was 21 or 22. Right? He was probably 1 year out of IIT. He's already invested a crore with us. He's staying budget in Union Square. He's used, YC has invited him, so they paid for the airfare. And at so many levels, right? That was swag at so many levels that I went back to my room saying, wow, man, this is something else, right? Something else, a new generation, a different level of aspiration and ambition. He wants Indian family office money because he's saying, wahan pe jo growth I can get in India for the next 10 years, I need local cover. I need people who have my back in India. And I wish at that age, at 21, 22, I could think like that. I wish my children are teenagers. I hope they learn to think like that.
Terrific story.
Let me jump in. I think this sets the stage for this discussion really well because on my right are two individuals who are proponents of invest and build in India, for India, invest and raise money from India. On my left are obviously Manthan, who would tell Indian founders, take money from us in the US and build trillion-dollar companies. Obviously, Saket, who's already on the way to building the next trillion-dollar company. And I, in the middle, I make money both sides. So I have no dog in this fight, to be sure. Right?
Marketplace.
Marketplace, yes. So with that, Saket, I'm sure you're ready to start with your answers.
So just before I answer, what's that guy doing now?
He's my client, so I
know. We are tracking him. He closed an angel round, by the way.
Well, that was 10 years back, so I'm guessing today he has to be something big.
No, this is
6 months ago. This is 6 months
6 months ago. Awesome. So that's good. I thought that's amazing. But that's a new breed, I guess. That's incredible. So to your question, right, Pranav, in terms of what should we do, say, for India, with India, to the students, what should we do around that? And we spoke about, different aspects and dimensions. Let me ask you something slightly differently. In this audience, right? How many of you guys use or know of Cursor.ai? Can I see hands? Cursor. Okay, awesome. I'm guessing half of this room knows Cursor, right? How many of you guys know ChatGPT? Can I see hands? Pretty much everybody. Awesome, right? How many of you guys would not or would care if ChatGPT came out of Russia, China, UK, Sweden, Silicon Valley, or Jabalpur? Do you really care about that? It answers a fundamental problem you have. You need something, it gives you an answer in a reliable way, and that's it, right? Cursor, if you're a developer, it just takes your experience productivity to a whole new level, right? You use any of these popular things. And by the way, is this a new phenomenon? No, go back, right? Do you care, like you use Facebook, you use WhatsApp, do you care where it comes from? Do you care whether a 10-year-old or a 15-year-old or an Indian or an American or a Pakistani creates that? The reality is we don't, right? I personally feel that it doesn't, so there are two types of products also, let's just double click there. One is a product-led growth model, and one is obviously enterprise B2B, right? And they're two very different. Just bucketing both of them together doesn't make sense, again, in my limited view. On the B2B side, right, because by design it's a $30 trillion economy versus $3 trillion in India, that too mostly still agriculture driven, that's the reason why the market is not there. So if you're running a B2B company, right, it just makes sense to be in the US selling while you can build in India. But if you really think about the B2C model, which is more around not e-commerce, but the incredible cutting edge product, I don't think you should care about India or no India. The question should be, can I work on something which fundamentally solves a problem for anybody who's sitting in the world, and work on it 20 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days, and be obsessed with it, till the time you get to a perfection where people are like, I will cry if this product stops working. That's the case if Instagram goes down today for 2 hours, or WhatsApp goes down for 2 hours. So I personally don't think it's an India or no India from a product-led growth perspective, right? For example, the great example is Postman. It's such a phenomenal product, right? People didn't say no to Postman, because it's based out of Bombay and it was built out of, no. They built an incredible product. And because they built and that was a product-led growth motion which was out there. Unfortunately, from India, you can count on your fingers how many B2B software companies have really come out and scaled beyond 100 million ARR, right? It's very unfortunate. But on the other side, the products also on the B2C side of product-led growth have not been there. So I would say forget about India, no India, what do we do about that? Just create a product which people will basically say, I'll not allow you to take it down. And if we start from that, that's 99% of it. 1% is what's your domicile, and of course it's great if you list in BSE versus NASDAQ, but that's just how I think about the product.
Makes sense. Good, so I think we have another 10 minutes left, so let's run through. I have a lot of questions I won't get through, but in the interest of time. Now, Saurabh, India's finally arrived, supposedly, right? Every 10 years, India shining, India this, India that. We had a prime minister when I was in school that is famous for telling us not to aspire to be a top 10 economy when we were number 17th or whatever. India will be number 3 inevitably, right? Whether it's 2027, 2029, past 5 trillion. No one's debating that anymore. We've come a long way for that not to be a debate anymore, which I hope most people in the room definitely lived through how much it took to get there. Now, India has to go global for us to go from 5 to 20, right? That's where Goldman Sachs are projecting us to be in the next 30 to 40 years. And for India to go global, globally competitive, building B2B software past 100 million, having more flexible capital controls, allowing Indian enterprises. I think the panelists in the morning, Motwani ji made a very good point about Adani buying something, a shipyard here. That has to happen. India cannot grow that large without that happening. So talk to us today. Do you believe that is possible? And if it's possible, what are the kind of investment theses you think all of us have to start thinking about to capture that opportunity for ourselves?
Sure. So again, some quick numbers to begin with, right? So our stock market, in the Indian stock market that is, has around 500 companies with $1 billion. 1 billion, I stress, not trillion as yet. We have 500 companies with $1 billion plus market cap, right?
The third in the world with 500?
The third in the world in terms of number of companies who become $1 billion, right? So the interesting number to focus on is out of those 500, 360 have become $1 billion companies in the last decade, right? And on that count, just to give you a sense of perspective, the American stock market, remember, is 15x India's size, right? In spite of that, America's only produced 1,200 billion dollar companies in the last decade, the American stock market that is. The American stock market produced 1,200 billion dollar companies in the last decade. India's produced 350 billion dollar companies in the last decade, right?
Not tech unicorns.
These are just regular companies, right? Now, let's come to the export angle. Out of those 350 companies that have emerged in the Indian stock market as becoming $1 billion plus plays, let's call them stock market unicorns, out of them, a mere 50 are export oriented. The other 300 gives you a sense of this colossal scale of the Indian economy. The other 300 are domestically focused companies doing regular domestic things, right? Now, out of those 50 that are export oriented, almost all of them are either IT services in some shape or form, engineering, R&D, IT services, or to a lesser extent, pharmaceutical companies, right? Barring IT/tech/pharma, our country's not been able to produce $1 billion export plays. Now, the reason for that, and this is where it both gets interesting and I think a little controversial. The reason for that, I think, is an overvalued currency. The Indian currency is overvalued. Why is it overvalued? One of the reasons it's overvalued is the diaspora sends back vast sums of money, something like $400 billion a year. Right? Indian IT services generates another $250 billion a year. India sells more IT services than Saudi Arabia sells oil, right? So if you have $650 billion pounding into an economy, right? unless every year, $650 billion pounding into an economy. Just remember our GDP is around 4 trillion. So in the context of $4 trillion economy, $650 billion is money flying back every year after year. That keeps the currency overvalued, right? And I think what we are going to see, and I suspect this will happen in the next 12 months, courtesy the bilateral trade negotiations, I think the Indian currency will become far cheaper, it will depreciate. I think we'll go closer to 100 to the dollar. If we go closer to 100 to the dollar, we're at 85 at the moment. If we go closer to 100 to the dollar, I think Indian manufacturing-led exports will take off, right? An overvalued currency makes it very difficult for Indian manufacturers. The only two sectors where we are able to export are sectors which are to do with the brain, right? Because if you play IT services and pharma, effectively you're playing the Indian brain, your ability to sell intellectual property. When you're selling IT and selling pharma, effectively you're selling the Indian brain, right? And thus you overcome the handicap of an overvalued currency. Courtesy what's happening with America and us in terms of trade negotiations, I think this is a 91 moment for India. Several people in India said it, but I strongly believe it's a 91 moment. I think the Indian currency will go towards 100 to the dollar, and that triggers, I think, a resurgence of manufacturing export-oriented companies, especially from southern India. I think I've met several people from Coimbatore. Those who are from Coimbatore, look long and hard. Your city will have multiple unicorns selling billions of dollars of worth of stuff into the Western world.
Fantastic. That's a lot of changes that are expected to happen. And I think it's inevitable. It has to happen for the growth to continue. Anil, I think you'll have the pleasure of closing this panel up, given we're just about out of time. Now, the US has a lot of different opinions about India. I think we discussed a lot of that in the earlier panels, right? But when it comes to investments, it's a no-brainer. India has performed. India will hopefully continue to perform. Any closing remarks from you, because you've seen this ecosystem build out? What should India do more of? What should India market differently? Any closing remarks for the audience here?
So Pranav, you talked about your time when you were in school, and who was the Prime Minister then?
I mean, the last Prime Minister.
Okay, fine. Unfortunately, I have to date myself. When I was in school, Indira Gandhi was the Prime Minister.
Oh, okay. No, not that bad.
No. But the reason
UPA 1 and 2.
The reason that's important is I still remember Asian Games, which was one of the biggest events of our lifetime. Japanese were trying to get Suzuki's and all these car companies into India. They actually made a plan, and somehow I remember this, right? They made a plan for creating the Delhi Metro in 1983. Indira Gandhi said, Delhi is not ready for, and this was the headlines, Delhi is not ready for Metro. Fuck that, right? And the problem is, we cannot afford to go back to that mentality.
Absolutely.
My biggest concern is that India has an amazing opportunity, so there's no denying, and we should be the third, and we must become and remain the third largest, perhaps even bigger. We have the capability of shooting ourselves in the foot.
Yes.
And that is my biggest fear. I heard the finance minister talk about all the great things, all the numbers. You and I had a jousting match about some of this. I'm as Indian as you are, so I'm not going to defend myself. You can ask me any IPL score and I'll beat you to it. But let's be real. There are some serious regulations. She announced 4 days ago angel tax been abolished. But why did you even have? Why did it?
13 years. 13 years.
And Mohandas ji is here. You guys have fought that battle.
13 years.
If you try to explain that angel tax to any investor in the US, they will hit their head. Why do you have?
It's not even this government that announced the angel tax. It's a previous.
It doesn't matter which government.
It took 13 years to remove it.
It took this government all this time to get rid of it. Yeah. I had Piyush Goyal in a conference with 20 of us saying, there is no angel tax. And I know there's angel tax because my clients are getting income tax notices for angel tax. We have to call this out and we have to address it. Otherwise, we have the ability to shoot ourselves and go back. And there are other countries looking for that opportunity for India to slip. The geopolitical winds are clearly in India's favor. A lot of manufacturing will start shifting, has to. A lot of technology development, our smart founders are coming in by the droves. We have to look at each and every regulation that's inhibiting them and remove them. And remove anybody and any position that's coming in the way. We have to have a Doge-like approach. I don't know what kind of political Doge-like approach to that bureaucracy. That is the only way we can succeed, and not just succeed, but sustain that level of growth, right? That would be my closing thought.
Fantastic. Thank you, Anil. I wish we had time for the rest of the panel, but looks like we have to wrap up. Thank you so much, everyone. And all of us are available, of course, after this. Thank you.